Welcome to C2G Talk, a series of one-on-one interviews with influential practitioners and thought leaders to explore the governance challenges raised by emerging approaches to alter the climate. I am Mark Turner, C2G's Director of Communications, and I'm speaking today with Jiahua, who is Professor of Economics and Director of the Institute of Ecocivilisation Studies at the Beijing University of Technology. He's also a member of the academic board of the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and a member of the independent group of scientists appointed by UN Secretary General in October 2020 for drafting the Global Sustainable Development Report 2023, and editor-in-chief of the Chinese Journal of Urban and Environmental Studies. He has edited and authored over 300 papers, articles, and books in English and Chinese, and was lead author of the IPCC Working Group 3 and the third, fourth, and fifth assessment reports on mitigation. Welcome, Jiahua, to C2G Talk.
Hello, thank you.
So let's start with a broad question. China has put ecological civilization at the center of its response to environmental degradation and climate change. Can you explain what this means and its role on the international stage?
Eco-civilization to many people outside China is something with Chinese characteristics. And they may find it difficult to understand. Well, to make it simple, I think that everybody knows industrial civilization. And this is in contrast to industrial civilization, a different, transformative new stage of human development. So this is not only environmental, ecological, it's very comprehensive, somewhat fundamental. To see the fundamental, that is, we can make it in comparison with industrial civilization. Under industrial civilization, the ethical principle is utilitarian. That is, if there's a utility, and then there would be a value. If there's no utility, there would be no value. And the objective function is profit maximization, wealth accumulation. So in this regard, the nature does not, have in many cases immediate value to an individual, to a group of people, and then it has no value, right? And under the new civilization, ecological or eco-civilization, and then the objective function is not simply maximization of profit, accumulation of wealth. It is seeking harmony between man and nature. It's for sustainability of our humankind. It's not for the maximization of present value. It's for sustainability of our future. So it is, we need to respect for nature, work together with nature. So this is, something really fundamental. And then under industrial civilization, we see the scale of economy. Right? Everything big, that is good. Everything money, that is efficient. And then under ecological civilization, we need to, work within the natural carrying capacity. It's not, you should, everything live within the capacity of nature. So this is very much, in contrast to industrial civilization. And then against such a background, we need to fight against climate change. That is, we resort to renewable energy, instead of exhaustible carbon-intensive fossil fuel energy. So this is, very much detailed, technological comparison. Of course, in the, production cycle under industrial civilization, it is from material through industrial processes, and then you have product and waste, right? Under ecological civilization, it's circular from raw material through the industrial processes, and then you have the raw materials and the product. So it's circular. We generate no waste. Everything is recyclable.
So how does this concept and how it's applied relate to existing international processes on climate change, biodiversity, the sustainable development agenda? Is there a way in which these two interlink?
It is interlinked, and it is not only a principle, it is also applicable at a practical level. You mentioned the climate change. We mean that, if we seek man and nature in harmony, and then we need to, work with nature. We need to adapt to nature. We need to be friendly with nature, right? And then we need to be sustainable. That is energy, water, everything. Instead of, energy without, consideration of nature. And then in terms of biodiversity, this is even more relevant because, biodiversity, many, genes, many species are not known up to now to our human beings. We have no value at all in the market. And then, for sustainability, we need to have biodiversity, need to have the diversity of genes, right? And then we need to be, harmonious with nature. So we need to conserve biodiversity. We need to be in harmonious with our nature, with other animals, other species. So this is something, very fundamental. That is, we leave nature, aside. Instead of, we developed every inch of land. We need to keep, nature reserve so that species, biodiversity can have a place to stay, to live in, to continue. So this is something, very different from industrial civilization. When you have value, okay, we have it developed, we sell it, we exchange it for money. So this is something, we need to be somewhat, consciousness, a change of mindset.
So does the world, in your opinion, currently have the multilateral governance tools, processes necessary to address and think about these interlinked challenges in this way? Or do we need to see an evolution of that multilateral governance? And to what extent is China helping influence the evolution of those governance systems?
Well, this is also relevant to this new paradigm, ecological civilization. Under industrial civilization, that is, when you are powerful and then you conquest the others, you ask the others to follow you. You are the dominant guy, and the others must be obedient. There is no diversity. That is hierarchical. Some people at the top of it, and the others at the bottom, right? This is industrial civilization. Under ecological civilization, we have diversity. We cooperate. We stay together. We work together. So that is why we need to have multilateral international relations instead of, somebody dominates everything. So this is, for climate change, we need to work together. We need to cooperate. No single country can get the huge problems resolved. So we must work together. There is a need, to be somewhat, inclusive, to be, diversified, and then we can, work together.
So how do you think the COVID crisis has influenced the way people around the world are thinking about how to govern these challenges? Are we seeing a shift in what we think we can do, how to react to the challenges that we've got?
Well, I think that there are quite a few aspects. One is that, the way we deal with nature, because the COVID-19 is something really very much, an alert that, human beings, are not the dominant, creature in the world. You have to, with all the other species, you are one of the members of the life community. So this is very much, a way that, we have to be, together with a life community. So this is something, with, man and nature harmony, we deal with nature. So this is one lesson, one, experience or one lesson we have to learn. And secondly, that is, in a globalized world, in a, Earth village, we live together. Nobody, can isolate himself from all the others. We are, on Earth, we are together, and then we have to cooperate, we have to work together to fight against the common enemy instead of, just fragmented. You do yours, I do mine, and then, that cannot have a solution. We must, fight against COVID-19 together, and then we can have a solution. So this is the second, the lesson or experiences so far we learned. And thirdly, the way of production, the way of consumption, the style of living, everything we need to reconsider. Not only see that, okay, well, under COVID-19, and then, we should be aware of, and afterwards, everything, goes back to normal. This is not the case. This is the new normal is that, we have to, take the license, learn the license. We have to, incorporate such, license into our way of living in the future, into the way of governance, global governance.
So I wonder if I could turn now to some of the issues that specifically C2G is focusing on. Firstly, the idea of carbon dioxide removal. So China aims to become carbon neutral by 2060. So as well as cutting emissions, what role do you think carbon dioxide removal might play in achieving that goal, whether nature-based or technology-based?
I must say that carbon dioxide removal, CDR, is essential, and it's also part of nature. Because like, the vegetation, forest, it emits carbon dioxide, and it absorbs, takes in carbon dioxide, and then it's in a balance. So that is carbon neutrality, right? So this is, but our human society, society has interrupted the cycle of nature, and then we emit more and more, and the nature cannot cope with, such increased amount of emissions. So this is something very, very important that, the carbon dioxide removal, nature-based solutions must be, the solution, we have to resort to. So this is one thing. And the other thing is that, we have to remember, there is a natural balance, and you cannot say that, nature will, get everything, resolved
Right.
given, the human greediness. If you are too greedy, the nature will not be able to cope with it. So this is second thing that is, our human beings have to, have some self-restraint, have
Yes.
to respect our nature. This is second point. The third point, I think that, this is something very important. That is, we have to get rid of carbon.
Yes.
If the carbon removal is somewhat, helpful, but, the natural capacity, at the very beginning, we talked about the capacity of nature is somewhat limited. So we have to live within the capacity of nature, and then beyond that, we should not emit more carbon dioxide. Otherwise, carbon neutrality will not be achievable.
That's very interesting. So you would not see a role for technology-based approaches to carbon dioxide removal by that philosophy? Am I understanding correctly, or do you think there might be some role of technology-based approaches?
You are right, because currently, we do have the technologies. I think that the industrial civilization was created by, and led, by technological innovation, technological, creativeness. I think that you are certainly right. And currently, we do have, direct, like, CCS, carbon capture and storage. We also have, carbon capture, utilization and storage. We also have some, direct, carbon dioxide, direct air capture. Right? We do have the technologies. But the problem is that, for, technologies, we need to, improve, to innovate. There's no problem about it. This should be encouraged. But on the other hand, we need to think about, what such technologies we need to, right? The thing is that, if you, for instance, carbon capture and storage, the thing is that currently the cost, I think that is much higher than, solar PV, than wind power, right? And then when you capture it, and then you have to have it, stored in the geological formation. And then if you store it, there is a risk that it will be, out again.
Yes.
And then, so what's for? And then direct air capture, I think that is also, in theory, it's okay. But problem is that, if there is no usage for such captured carbon,
yes,
then what's for?
Yes.
So we need to think about, very much, comprehensively in a longer term, and then we need to see whether this is somewhat, harmony between man and the nature. So this is something, of course, in case we have some sort of emergency,
yes,
very short term, and then we can have some, human-induced, interruptions, human-induced technologies. But if you use it as a constant and normal, and then you would see the value of it, the final outcome of it.
So your philosophy here is very clear. I'm just wondering, as the world tries to reach this harmony, do you see in the meantime some kind of some actors are nonetheless pushing on these technologies? And do you see the possibility that we emerge in some kind of global competition to reach these technologies, that this could cause impacts with regards to trying to reach the harmony you refer to? I'm trying to get a sense of this moment that we're at, where there's quite a lot of discussion around these technologies.
Right. I know what you mean. You mean, the so-called, earlier, I think that is some 20 years earlier, when I was with the IPCC Working Group 3 Technical Support Unit, there was a term called geoengineering. And of course, carbon capture and storage is part of, geoengineering. But that one, I think that we talked about it already. And the other, more recently, that is solar radiation, modification. I think that, this, I'm open. For one thing, at a different scale, and a different, form, we see some of them can be very much helpful, useful. For instance, albedo, like, if on the top of the roof, on the surface of the land, you have, to have the solar radiation reflected, right? You would reduce, the heat from the sun, right? And then if you use this, you use, solar panels, on one hand, you increase albedo, and on the other, you have energy generated. And also you preserve, you reduce evaporation, increase moisture.
Yes.
And these, multiple benefits. So in this case, why should not? We should do it. And then the second thing that is, the cloud sort of injection or something.
Yes.
In China, it's been in practice. That is, weather modification.
Yes.
Because in some arid areas, when you have a moisture cloud, you have some injections, and then you have a rainfall. So this is, and also you have some important event somewhere, and then you artificially, remove some cloud. This,
Yes.
why not? This should be, this is, at the local scale, it's manageable, right? And then, at a global scale, like, injection of aerosols in the stratosphere, if we have an emergency, we have no other solutions. As a final resort, we should not have it, excluded.
Right.
It should be part of, the portfolio for actions. So, we should keep everything open, just like, carbon capture and storage, technological innovation, just keep it there, just in case we need it. So this is what I, would like to say.
Yes. Do you see discussion at the moment? Let's take specifically perhaps one of the most controversial ideas you raised in there, stratospheric aerosol injection, this idea that you put aerosols in the stratosphere to reflect back sunlight to lower global temperatures. First of all, is there research or debate in China on that idea? And do you see any discussion in Chinese policy circles and think tanks about that idea?
Well, I think that such term or such technology has been discussed in the academic community. We have papers published in Chinese journals, and we also have a somewhat 10 million RMB level that's a huge project, research project, implemented with regard to solar geoengineering, solar radiation modification. So that we have research, we have discussion, we have publications, and then at the policy arena, I think that some of the the decision makers or policy makers are aware of such an option, and then for actual application, I think that there is no sufficient information. There is no actual so-called urgency to take such an option. So I think that for these people everything from an idea to research and to implementation, and then that takes a long term. Just look at, global, greenhouse gases, global warming, and FCCC, Kyoto, Paris Agreement. It's a long process,
yes.
Quite a few decades, if not centuries. So, I think that, our knowledge is limited, and, we need to go step by step and see, when further information available, further scientific understanding, is clear, and then I think that, we can go further and further. So everything, I think that there's no need to make a decision in a hurry.
So, but at the same time, of course, building up governance systems internationally takes time. And so do you think there's something that the world should be thinking about now, at least in terms of preparing for some of these steps that you mentioned, in terms of how one might go about governing at least the research, if not maybe at some stage, dealing with guidelines or guardrails against premature deployment or other such issues? What role do you see now for governance at the international level on some of these solar radiation modification approaches?
Well, I think that this is a very important issue, simply because, for actual application, I think that, it'll take a longer time. But for research, we do need to follow some principles, or to follow some guidelines. Otherwise, just like, the embryo, gene, human gene modification, right? This is something, not only unethical, there's a huge uncertainty. Because of such uncertainty, because of limited understanding, we need to, have a governance structure created, agreed, so that, people can do research, undertake an experiment in the right way, in the right manner, so that risk can be minimized and the uncertainty can be brought under control. So governance is an issue that should go, in advance. If it's, if you have so many problems created, and that will be too late. So this should be well in advance, so that, our research experiments, can be brought under sort of, control or management.
I wonder if I might ask a question, how you see broader public attitudes in China evolving on climate change and sustainable development, and of course, ecological civilization right now. We have a situation in a number of countries where there can be quite a lot of difference sometimes between what scientists or politicians or different members of the public think. I'm just wondering if you could tell me a little bit about how you see this debate evolving in China. And in particular, perhaps, I'm very interested in how you see the general relationship between the role of science and how people think about these ideas, because seeing different countries differ in how public attitudes and are driven by science and the research.
Right. Well, I can tell you, the understanding and the attitudes, are in a continued evolutionary process. 20 years earlier, or a quarter of a century earlier, in the late 1990s, global warming, carbon emission reductions, that was something, nothing to do with our Chinese, nothing to do with China. And at that time, I was a researcher, and, as an academic researcher, my attitude or my understanding was, carbon equality, carbon rights, So, you have, they develop the rich guys, you emit so much, you are so rich. Why, should we poor, restrict or limit our own emissions? No way. That was, 25 years earlier, right? Because at that time, of course, technology is another fact. Because, at that time, solar PV, so expensive. There was nothing in China at a commercial scale, so expensive. And wind as well, nothing at all, only hydropower, right? And then somewhat, early this century, we believe that, no, carbon is not the thing we need. What we need is development. So we see, in the academic community, we see equal access to sustainable development. It's not carbon equality. It's equal access to sustainable development. So this has been changed already, right? That's only, some 10 years or so. And then later, in 2010s, a few years earlier, we realized that, my goodness, carbon is not only bad, but also, conventional pollution is also, associated with the combustion of fossil fuels. The foggy weather, the filthy air, the health, damage. We cannot tolerate it anymore, right? And also, my goodness, solar is so cheap now. We use solar for electricity, for water heating. It's a nature-based solution. It's sustainable. It is, accessible. It is affordable, right? And now it is an opportunity. Why should we not do it, right? So I think that, this is a process, of, change of ideas. It's not, so now I think that you can see in China, China has much, number one installed capacity of solar, number one installed capacity of wind, number one installed capacity of hydropower, right? I think that, the others, China is an indication that, for the less developed countries, you do not have to go high carbon for development, for being rich, and then you simply go to zero carbon, to renewable, and then you will be clean, you will be rich, you will have the energy services, you have everything. So this is, I think that now, in China, I think that, everybody accepts that renewable energy is the solution.
Maybe just a final question on your personal approach and philosophy. This is sometimes a rather difficult topic, especially when one becomes acquainted with some of the possible outcomes for humanity and civilization if we don't get this right. How do you balance, a hope that we will get this right, practical action, with the size and gravity of the challenge and potential despair that can lead to? What kind of philosophies guide you? What keeps you centered in terms of approaching what a serious issue climate change is?
Well, the philosophy, I think that, 2,500 years earlier, the Chinese, ancient philosopher made it very clear, man and nature are in one. Man and nature must be, stay in harmony. And wealth, money is something outside of your body. You just, enough is enough. Everything redundant, no necessary. So in that case, I think that, it's not simply, the industrial, ideology or industrial philosophy that is more money, more wealth, bigger house, bigger cars. It's not necessary enough, is enough. So I think that, clean air, clear water, green space, that's, human beings are part of nature. You have a huge, apartment, very tall in the sky. It's no good because you need to, be with nature, with, in the forestry, with other animals, with, natural vegetation. So that means that, you have to be in harmony with nature. You are part of nature. And then only in that case, and then you can calm yourself down. And then, you can think about, what's our life for. Our life, is only for a short duration in the history of, of human species, of, with respect to, Mother Earth, is really negligible. And then, when you think all this together, you see that, our happiness, should rely on harmony with nature. If nature is against us, there's no happiness at all. So this is something why, we should to redefine our happiness, which is not utilitarian, it is harmonious. If you have all the enemies around, how can you be happy? Right? And then if everybody, is friendly, and then you must be happy. You have no reason to be nervous.
Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Ban Jiahua, thank you so much for doing the C2G talk with us. Really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thank you.